When you begin to truly love yourself, the first and most powerful realization is that self-worth doesn't come from what others say about you, but from what you whisper to your own soul when no one is listening. So many people spend their entire lives trying to be loved, trying to be seen, trying to be enough in the eyes of others. But have you ever paused long enough to notice that no matter how loud the applause may be, if you do not believe in your own worth, the applause sounds empty? This is because love that is borrowed from the outside will always feel temporary, but love that is born within becomes unshakable. It is easy to mistake approval for worth. When someone compliments you, you feel high. When they ignore you, you feel invisible. When they reject you, you feel broken. But that is not love. That is dependency disguised as validation. To truly love yourself, you must stop measuring your value through the mirror of someone else's eyes. You must build an unshakable home within yourself, where even if the world falls silent, your heart still sings. Think about how fragile life becomes when your sense of worth is held in the hands of other people. One word can lift you, one word can destroy you. And in that endless chase, you forget the most essential truth. You were already worthy the moment you were born. You do not need to earn it. You do not need to prove it. You only need to remember it. The tragedy is that people spend years trying to collect love like trophies, thinking it will make them whole. But no amount of trophies can fill the emptiness of a heart that hasn't learned to love itself. When you love yourself, the world stops being a battlefield where you fight for attention. It becomes a canvas where you express your essence freely. You stop competing for love, and you start radiating it. You no longer beg for space in someone's heart, because your own heart is finally your home. This is not arrogance. This is quiet strength. This is the kind of power that no rejection can break and no criticism can shrink. The reason many people fear being alone is not because silence is unbearable, but because in that silence they meet themselves. And for many, that is a stranger. They have spent so much time trying to be what others wanted them to be, that they forgot how to be who they truly are. But when you dare to meet yourself with honesty, when you look at yourself without the filters of expectation and fear, you will see something extraordinary. You will see that what you've been searching for has always been right here. Loving yourself begins with trust. Trusting that even when things fall apart, you still have value. Trusting that even when no one chooses you, you are still worthy of being chosen by yourself. It's about building a relationship with your own soul so strong that the storms outside cannot shake it. People will come and go, opinions will rise and fade, but your worth must not move with their tides. And understand this self-worth is not loud. It doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't even need to convince anyone. It is quiet. It is steady. It is the calm in the middle of chaos, the soft light that remains when everything else fades. And once you discover that, the game changes. Because then love stops being something you chase and becomes something you radiate. When you don't love yourself, every rejection feels personal, every silence feels like a wound, every disapproval feels like a mirror reflecting your lack. But when you do love yourself, these same things lose their power over you. Rejection doesn't break you because it doesn't define you. Silence doesn't scare you because your own voice is enough. Disapproval doesn't shrink you because your worth was never built on their approval in the first place. The greatest love story you will ever live is the one you have with yourself. And like every love story, it begins with recognition. It begins the day you look in the mirror and say, I am enough. Not because someone told you so, not because the world gave you permission, but because deep inside, you finally understand that worthiness is not something you earn. It is something you are. And once that realization settles in your bones, the world no longer controls how you feel about yourself. People's opinions may still arrive, but they no longer stay. Their judgment may knock, but it cannot enter. Their approval may be sweet, but it is no longer necessary, because now your worth belongs to you and you alone. This is the quiet revolution that begins when you stop searching for love outside and start remembering it inside. This is where freedom is born, because no one can take away a love that lives within you. When you truly begin to love yourself, something beautiful happens. You stop seeing your imperfections as enemies and start recognizing them as the very essence of your humanity. All your life, the world teaches you to hide the parts that aren't polished, to fix every flaw, to erase every scar. You grow up believing that love is something reserved for the perfect, for the ones who never stumble, never break, never fall apart. But the truth is the opposite. Real love isn't found in perfection. It's born in the gentle acceptance of everything that makes you real. Every crack in your being tells a story. Every flaw you've tried so hard to hide has shaped you in ways perfection never could. When you spend your energy trying to be flawless, you become a stranger to yourself. You wear masks, build walls, and silence your true voice just to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. But the cost of that act is heavy. You lose touch with your own soul. Imperfections are not mistakes to be erased. They are proof of your journey. They are evidence that you have lived, that you have tried, that you have dared to be human. A scar does not make you less beautiful. It makes you more alive. A weakness does not make you less worthy. It makes you more real. You see, there is a quiet strength in accepting yourself without conditions. It is the moment you no longer need to be perfect to be loved. The world has a strange way of convincing us that only polished surfaces deserve love, that the broken must be fixed before they can be worthy. But have you noticed how the people who touch us the most are not the flawless ones, but the ones who carry their scars with grace? It's not their perfection that inspires us. It's their authenticity. It's the courage to be seen as they are. When you stop hiding your imperfections, something shifts. The energy you used to spend pretending becomes the energy you use to live. Instead of shrinking away from the mirror, you meet your own gaze with softness. Instead of wishing to be someone else, you begin to stand where you are and say, "This is me." And in that moment, the burden of trying to be perfect falls away like a heavy stone. The irony is that what you call imperfections are often the very things that make you unforgettable. Your awkwardness, your quirks, your quiet fears, your loud laughter, your uneven edges. They are the brushstrokes of your unique existence. To erase them is to erase your story. To embrace them is to finally step into the light of who you truly are. Loving your imperfections doesn't mean giving up on growth. It means understanding that growth doesn't come from hating yourself into change. Real growth is born from compassion. When you accept your flaws, you create a safe space within yourself to evolve. You're not running away from who you are. You're growing from where you stand. And that is far more powerful than perfection could ever be. You may have spent years believing that your flaws made you unlovable. That people would only stay if you hid the messy parts of your soul. But the truth is, the people who truly matter will love you not despite those flaws, but because of the depth and humanity they reveal. And more importantly, the person who must love those parts first is you. Because when you accept yourself fully, you no longer seek to be completed by someone else. You become whole on your own. Perfection is fragile. It shatters under the smallest pressure. But imperfection is alive. It bends, it breathes, it grows. When you embrace it, you stop fearing failure. You stop fearing judgment. You stop fearing not being enough. Because you finally understand. You were never meant to be flawless. You were meant to be human. There is a quiet beauty in letting go of the obsession to fix yourself. You don't have to heal everything before you're allowed to love yourself. You don't have to have it all figured out to be worthy of kindness. You can be a work in progress and still be worthy. You can be broken in places and still be whole in your soul. The moment you begin to accept your imperfections is the moment you give yourself permission to live fully. You stop holding your breath, waiting for the day you'll be enough. You start breathing now as you are. You stop apologizing for being human. You stop comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. You begin to understand that your worth was never measured by how smooth your edges are. When you carry your imperfections with love, you become unshakable. Because no one can use your flaws against you when you've already embraced them. No criticism can cut you as deeply as your acceptance can protect you. No rejection can shake the foundation built on self-compassion. You become free. Not because you're flawless, but because you're fearless about being real. And when you walk through the world with that kind of self-acceptance, something magical happens. The masks fall off. The walls crumble. The world finally sees the real you, and the real you was always enough. Because true love, the kind that endures, begins when you look at your own imperfections, not as burdens to be carried, but as treasures to be honored. That is where your power lies. Every word you speak to yourself is a seed, and those seeds quietly shape the way you see the world and the way you see yourself. You may not always notice it, but your inner voice is constantly whispering to you. Sometimes gently, sometimes cruelly. And that voice becomes the lens through which you live your entire life. If the voice inside is harsh, no amount of praise from the outside can make you feel at peace. But if the voice inside is kind, even silence from the world cannot shake your foundation. This is why learning to speak to yourself as someone you love is one of the most powerful acts of self-respect. Many people are gentle with others but merciless with themselves. They offer compassion to friends, forgiveness to strangers, and understanding to those who stumble. But the moment they make a mistake, they turn into their own worst critic. Their inner voice shouts what no one else would dare to say. It calls them names they would never use on anyone else. And slowly that voice becomes a prison. It convinces them they're not enough, not worthy, not deserving. But that voice is not truth, it's just a habit. It is the echo of fears and judgments absorbed over time, repeated so often it begins to sound real. You cannot silence that voice through force. You must transform it through love. Imagine for a moment that you are speaking to a dear friend, someone you care for deeply. If they stumbled, would you say to them the same things you say to yourself? Would you call them weak, useless, or broken? Of course not. You would offer understanding. You would remind them of their strength. You would encourage them to rise again. And yet, How easily do you deny yourself that same kindness? The way you speak to yourself is not just a reflection of how you feel. It is a powerful force that shapes how you live. When your inner voice constantly criticizes, your confidence slowly crumbles. You begin to believe the lies it tells you. You start to play small, avoid risks, shrink your dreams to fit the cage your mind has built. But when your inner voice is gentle, when it speaks like a friend rather than an enemy, something shifts. You begin to trust yourself. You begin to walk differently, breathe differently, live differently. This isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about creating a space inside where you are allowed to be human. A place where mistakes are lessons, not verdicts. A place where failure is part of the journey, not a definition of your worth. Speaking kindly to yourself is not weakness. It is strength, because it means you've stopped letting your fear dictate the tone of your inner world. For years, many carry the belief that harshness motivates, that being hard on oneself is the only way to improve. But in truth, cruelty never leads to growth. It only creates fear. It only makes you move not out of inspiration, but out of shame. And shame never builds anything strong. Real growth begins when you feel safe within yourself, and safety begins with kindness. Your mind is a garden, and your words are water. When you water it with doubt and insult, weeds grow. When you water it with patience and love, strength grows. A flower doesn't bloom because someone yelled at it to grow. It blooms because it was nurtured. So it is with the human spirit. When your inner voice becomes gentle, your potential begins to bloom in silence. Listen closely to the way you speak to yourself during your quietest moments. Do you encourage or condemn? Do you build or break? The words you whisper to yourself in the dark shape the light of your days. If every sunrise begins with self-criticism, your world shrinks. If every sunrise begins with self-acceptance, your world expands. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly, like learning a new language. At first, the old voice will try to return loud and familiar. But each time you have a choice. You can meet it with more criticism, or you can respond gently. You can say, "I hear you, but I will not speak to myself this way anymore." Slowly, your mind begins to trust this new tone. Slowly, kindness replaces cruelty. It is important to remember that the voice you cultivate inside becomes the foundation of the life you build outside. When that voice becomes loving, the world doesn't need to give you constant approval to make you feel whole. You stop chasing praise like air because you already breathe love from within. You stop fearing rejection because you no longer reject yourself. You stop shrinking to fit expectations because you finally speak your own truth clearly. The most powerful relationship you will ever have is with yourself. And every relationship is built on communication. If that communication is harsh, the relationship becomes one of resistance. If it is kind, the relationship becomes a sanctuary. Imagine living in a mind where you are not at war with yourself. Imagine waking each day to a voice that believes in you, supports you, and reminds you of your strength. That is what it means to truly love yourself. You do not need to wait for the world to be gentle with yourself. You do not need to earn your own kindness. You only need to give yourself the same love you have so easily given to others. Because when you become your own friend, the world's noise loses its power. Your worth no longer depends on what others say. It flows from what you tell yourself every single day. And when that voice finally learns to speak with love, everything changes. There is something quietly powerful about understanding that not everything deserves your energy. People spend their lives guarding their time, scheduling it carefully, protecting it as if it were gold. But what they often forget is that energy is far more precious than time. Time may be measured in minutes and hours, but energy determines the quality of every single one of those minutes. If your energy is scattered, exhausted, or consumed by what doesn't serve your soul, even the most beautifully planned hours become empty. Protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's an act of deep self-respect. There will always be things in this world trying to claim your energy. People, situations, conversations, endless noise. Some of it is subtle, wrapped in the language of responsibility or kindness. Some of it is loud, demanding, and urgent. But what many never learn is that saying yes to everything is the fastest way to lose yourself. When your energy is constantly leaking into places where it doesn't belong, you wake up one day feeling hollow. Not because you've done nothing, but because you've done everything except nurture your own being. You have the right to decide what enters your inner space. You have the right to say no without guilt, to step back without apology, to walk away without explanation. Yet so often, people stay entangled in places that drain them simply because they fear disappointing others. They give and give and give, not out of love, but out of obligation. And slowly, they begin to disappear from their own lives. When you protect your energy, you begin to hear your own voice again. In the noise of constant demands, your truth gets drowned out. But in the stillness of protected space, your soul starts to speak. You begin to know what truly matters to you. You begin to feel what nourishes you instead of what merely distracts you. It's in that space that you remember your worth is not defined by how much you give away, but by how deeply you honor yourself. Many people confuse endless giving with love. But love without boundaries is not love. It's exhaustion dressed up as kindness. If you give away your energy until there is nothing left for yourself, that is not noble. That is neglect. To love yourself means to understand that your energy is sacred. And anything sacred must be guarded, not out of fear, but out of reverence. There will be people who do not understand your boundaries. There will be moments when saying no feels uncomfortable. But discomfort is not a sign you are wrong. It is a sign you are growing out of old patterns. For too long, you may have believed that your worth was measured by how much of yourself you sacrificed. But the truth is the opposite. The more you honor your energy, the more clearly you can give from a place that is real. Giving from emptiness is a quiet kind of self-destruction. But giving from fullness is a quiet kind of power. The world will constantly pull at you, not because it's cruel, but because it doesn't know your limits. You are the one who must teach it. If you don't protect your energy, no one else will. People will take as much as you allow, sometimes without even realizing they are taking. And it's not their responsibility to set your boundaries. It's yours. Energy is like a flame. If you let every wind blow through it, it flickers and dies. But if you guard it carefully, it becomes steady. It warms you. It lights your path. It can even light the paths of others without burning itself out. Protecting your energy doesn't mean isolating yourself from the world. It means choosing carefully what and who gets access to the fire inside you. The simplest way to know if something is draining your energy is to listen to how you feel when you leave. Some conversations leave you lighter. Some leave you heavier. Some places feel like air. Some feel like chains. Your body always knows. Your intuition always whispers. But most people are too busy or too afraid to listen. Loving yourself means finally listening to that whisper. It means trusting that your peace matters more than pleasing anyone. It is not selfish to walk away from what harms your spirit. It is not unkind to step back from noise that steals your clarity. It is not cruel to choose silence over chaos. It is wisdom. And the more you honor that wisdom, the more alive you become. When you guard your energy, you don't become colder. You become clearer. You stop being pulled in 100 directions and start moving in the direction of your truth. Eventually, you will discover that not everyone deserves your energy. Not every battle deserves your attention. Not every storm deserves your presence. Some things are best left outside the gates of your inner world, because your inner world is where your peace lives. And once your peace is protected, everything else begins to fall into place. When you treat your energy like something precious, the world begins to reflect that back to you. The people who value your presence will stay. The ones who only came to consume it will naturally drift away. What remains will be honest. What remains will be real. And in that stillness, your soul finally has the space to breathe, to grow, and to shine without fear of being dimmed. Because self-love at its core is not just about embracing who you are. It's about protecting the space where that self can thrive. The journey of loving yourself is not a single moment of awakening. It is a daily practice, a quiet commitment that unfolds step by step. People often believe that self-love is something you arrive at like a destination. A perfect day where everything suddenly feels right and you never doubt yourself again. But real love for yourself doesn't appear like a grand explosion. It grows slowly, like morning light creeping through a window. It's built in small choices, quiet forgiveness, gentle progress. It's not about becoming flawless. It's about learning to meet yourself with grace again and again. Perfection has a way of deceiving the mind. It whispers that you must fix everything before you can love yourself. It convinces you that unless you've achieved enough, healed enough, or become enough, you're not worthy of kindness. And so you keep waiting. Waiting to feel good enough to live fully, to love fully, to be fully present in your own skin. But perfection never arrives. It's a moving target, a shadow that grows each time you chase it. And in that endless chase, life slips quietly through your fingers. Progress, on the other hand, is honest. It doesn't demand that you become someone else. It only asks that you take the next step as you are. It recognizes that growth happens not in grand leaps, but in quiet consistency. It allows you to stumble without shame, to begin again without judgment. When you choose progress over perfection, you give yourself permission to live, not just wait for some imagined version of yourself to finally be worthy. Every day, you will face moments where you can either criticize yourself for not being there yet, or honor yourself for still moving forward. Those moments define the kind of relationship you build with your soul. When you expect perfection, every mistake feels like failure. Every misstep feels like proof that you are unworthy. But when you honor progress, every small step becomes sacred. Even the days where you only manage to breathe through the storm are part of your growth. There will be days when you fall back into old habits, when doubt creeps in like an unwelcome guest. There will be mornings when your reflection feels unfamiliar, when the voice in your head is not kind. In those moments, perfection will demand that you judge yourself, but progress will remind you to keep going, to keep showing up, even if your hands are shaking, to keep believing, even if your heart feels tired. Loving yourself isn't about always feeling strong. It's about allowing yourself to be human. It's about forgiving yourself 1,000 times, not because you're weak, but because you're learning. Real love is patient. It doesn't walk away when things get messy. It stays. It grows roots in the imperfect soil of your life and finds a way to bloom there. The world celebrates big transformations, but real change is often quiet. It lives in the tiny choices no one sees. The moment you choose to speak kindly to yourself when you could have been cruel. The moment you decide to rest instead of punish yourself for being tired. The moment you allow yourself to feel joy without guilt. These small acts build the foundation for something unshakable. When you fall into the trap of perfection, self-love feels distant, almost impossible. Because perfection demands performance. It says, you are only worthy if you succeed. But progress whispers, you are worthy because you are trying. And that whisper is where freedom begins. When you stop needing to earn your own love, you start giving it freely. It is not weakness to be a work in progress. It is strength to keep growing when no one is clapping, to keep standing when no one is watching, to keep believing when no one is cheering. You do not need to arrive to be worthy. You are worthy along the way. And each small act of grace toward yourself is a step toward a deeper love that cannot be taken from you. Remember that life doesn't unfold in a straight line. There will be detours, pauses, moments of uncertainty. But every step counts. Even the backward steps teach you something. Even the moments of doubt carve deeper understanding. When you look at your journey not as a race to perfection, but as a dance with progress, you stop hating the process and start honoring it. The people who wait for perfection never begin. The people who choose progress build something real, because progress is forgiving. It allows you to grow at your own pace. It doesn't punish you for being human. It holds your hand through the storms instead of judging you for not being dry. Self-love becomes real not when you finally have everything figured out, but when you decide to love yourself through the figuring out. It's in the quiet courage of showing up for yourself each day, even when the world doesn't applaud. It's in the softness of allowing imperfection to exist without letting it define you. It's in the stillness of realizing that being a work in progress is not a failure. It's a miracle. Every sunrise gives you another chance to choose progress, to forgive yourself for yesterday, to be present today, to grow, not because you have to be perfect, but because you are alive and you are worthy. And when you choose progress again and again, you build something stronger than perfection ever could. You build a love that endures. There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize that no amount of external validation can replace the power of believing in themselves. All their lives, they may have waited for someone to notice their worth, to applaud their efforts, to reassure them that they are good enough. But the truth is, the world can love you and still not make you feel whole if you have not learned to love yourself. And the day you stop waiting for someone else to clap for you is the day you become free. We are raised in a world that teaches us to seek approval. From an early age, we are rewarded when others are pleased and ignored when they are not. Over time, we internalize this rhythm, that our worth is measured not by what we feel, but by what others reflect back to us. And so we learn to perform, to adapt, to bend ourselves into shapes that fit the expectations around us. But that kind of life is fragile, because the applause can stop at any moment, and when it does, we are left with a silence we cannot bear. To truly love yourself is to learn to be your own supporter, to stand in your own corner, even when no one else does. It's not about arrogance. It's not about believing you're better than anyone else. It's about standing firmly in the quiet knowing that your worth does not disappear just because no one is watching. It's about learning to clap for yourself, even when the room is empty. When you become your own supporter, you stop living like a reflection of other people's expectations. You stop shrinking yourself to fit in. Stop performing just to be accepted. You begin to speak with your own voice. And that voice no longer trembles just because the world is silent. This is not something that happens overnight. It's a practice. It's built every time you choose to trust yourself instead of doubting. Every time you choose to take the next step without waiting for someone else's permission. There will be moments when people won't understand your journey. There will be times when you will stand alone with your dream, your vision, your truth. In those moments, the old habit will whisper, "Wait for someone to believe in you first." But real strength comes from whispering back, "I already believe." When that belief becomes your anchor, you no longer fear the silence. You no longer need the chorus of others to make you feel worthy. Supporting yourself doesn't mean you reject the love of others. It means you no longer depend on it to exist. It means their applause becomes a melody you enjoy, not oxygen you need to survive. And that subtle shift changes everything. Because when you no longer fear their silence, you become unshakable. You stop living for approval, and you start living for truth. Life has a way of testing you through quiet seasons. There will be moments where it feels like no one sees the work you're doing, no one hears the words you're speaking, no one understands the path you've chosen. But those are the moments where your own voice matters the most. Those are the moments where your inner support becomes your greatest strength. Because if you can stand with yourself in silence, the noise of the world can never control you again. Think of how many dreams have been abandoned because someone waited too long for applause that never came. How many talents were buried because their owners believed they were only real if someone else said so. But the truth is, some of the most extraordinary growth happens in silence, far away from the eyes of others. The flower does not bloom because it is being watched. It blooms because it was meant to. And so do you. When you are your own supporter, you start to create from a different place. You create not to prove something, but to express something. You move through life with a kind of quiet power that doesn't need to be validated. You learn to trust the process, even when the results haven't arrived yet. You learn to celebrate your steps, even when no one else understands the journey. And slowly, that kind of self-support becomes unbreakable. It is easy to cheer for yourself when everything is going well. But the real test comes in the moments when nothing seems to move, when doubts creep in like shadows, when the world is indifferent. That is when self-love must speak the loudest. Not through shouting, but through quiet presence, through the simple act of not abandoning yourself. And as you build this inner foundation, you realize something beautiful. When you are your own supporter, you stop fearing failure. Because even when you fall, you know you will not turn against yourself. You will help yourself rise. You will hold your own hand and keep walking. That kind of faith in yourself is not loud, but it is stronger than anything the world can give you. The applause of others is fleeting. It rises and falls like the tide. But the love you give yourself, the quiet, patient, unwavering support, that is eternal. And when you find it, the world no longer has the power to define you, because your worth has never belonged to anyone else. It has always been yours. And once you stand in that truth, nothing can shake you.